who drove through the snow and are there today. Appreciate that. And for all of those joining us on WebEx. Committee, we do have two bill hearings today, and we will begin by opening the hearing on Senate Bill 45 with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 45 would amend KSA 723713, which is the part of the Virtual School Act. Current law provides for an alternative calculation for virtual school graduation rates for state-level accreditation purposes. The bill would exclude from that calculation students who were enrolled in a virtual school but transferred to homeschooling or a non-accredited private school in Kansas or another state. The bill would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee, what questions do we have for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you, Tamara. Appreciate it. We will now move to proponent testimony, and we will begin with Cassandra Barton, Head of School, Insight School of Kansas. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Welcome to committee.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. I am Cassandra Barton. I serve as head of school for Insight School of Kansas, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I know the weather made it I was a little nervous that this wouldn't happen, so I'm glad that it did, and I appreciate that. I'm here to speak in support of Senate Bill 45, and I appreciate you taking time to discuss options that help virtual schools and the districts that authorize them continue to be accredited and support not only the students in their physical boundaries, but students across the state. We at Insight are one of 58 virtual schools or programs in the state that serve high school grade levels, and 38 of us are ones that serve students outside of their district boundaries. Currently at Insight, we're serving students residing in 150 different districts other than Spring Hill School District, our authorizing district. Insight is here to serve as an option for students who need something other than their current schooling situation, which results in our students having a variety of educational backgrounds. We appreciate the passage of the virtual school graduation rate bill during the 2022 session. That has helped portray a more accurate picture of our graduation rate performance with the students that we serve. And this bill today that we're discussing, Senate Bill 45, just further expands upon that and takes it to another level by also removing students who leave the public virtual school, like an Insight, to continue their education via homeschool or a non-accredited private school. Insight and other public virtual schools are schools of choice, and because of that, we do draw families who've utilized options other than the traditional brick and mortar public schools in the past. And that may make them a bit more transient. These families tend to ebb and flow with the needs of their student and of their family life when they think about what they're going to do for schooling each year and considering different modes of education for their students. We've been working very diligently on our official graduation rate for years. And for 2024, we landed at 71.2%, which is about a 26% increase over 5 years, which we're making great progress and going to continue to work on it. When we were looking at our final list of non-graduates for 2024, we had one student we found that had left us at the end of their freshman year to attend a non-credited private religious school. Each fall, we work on a report for the state called the Dropout Graduation Summary Report. And as I was doing that this year, I called that parent of that student just to check in, see if they had graduated, see if they had ever attended another public school after leaving Insight. And the parent shared with me that they did graduate from that private religious non-accredited school, and that they were currently enrolled and taking courses at a technical program in the state. That was a fantastic update to get. However, that student does remain then on our non-graduate list for 2024 and counts against us on our graduation rate. In addition to that one, we found 5 other students who had left Insight to continue their education via homeschool. 3 of those 5 students were with us for less than a school year, and that demonstrates that these families are maybe wanting to try virtual school to see if it's a better fit than what they're currently doing, but ultimately they determined that they prefer the homeschool option instead. Families do have the right to exercise school choice in Kansas, and their choosing to do so shouldn't penalize public virtual schools, in my opinion. Removing those 6 students from our graduation rate would increase it to a 73.8 for 2024. And that, coupled with the removal of any credit deficient students as outlined in the law passed in 2022, would put us at around an 82% graduation rate calculation for accreditation purposes. That rate is a more accurate representation of our performance and would better support us in maintaining accreditation. In everything that we do at Insight, we strive to be able to continue to be an option for Kansas students and families who, for whatever reason, just need a different schooling choice outside of the traditional options. I ask for your support on Senate Bill 45, and I really appreciate your time and listening to me today. And with that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Committee, what questions do we have for the proponent? I am seeing and hearing none, so thank you so much again for being here and for your testimony. We will now turn to opponent testimony, and we have Shannon Kimball, President of the Kansas PTA. Shannon? Is Shannon Kimball with us?
Madam Chair, this is Lance from Broadcasting in the committee room. I can see she's online. It looks like she just unmuted.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Chair Erickson. Shannon Kimball with the Kansas Association of School Boards. I just want to verify you were intending to call on me and not someone from Kansas PTA at this time.
Yes, I have you down as PTA. I thought maybe you were wearing a different hat today, but yes,
No,
Shannon, so
no.
please proceed.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Again, my name is Shannon Kimball. I am here on behalf of the Kansas Association of School Boards today, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to provide testimony on Senate Bill 45. As we shared in our written testimony, there are 2 legislative policy principles for our association members that apply to this particular proposed legislation. One, having to do with what we believe is the State Board of Education's general authority over accreditation requirements. And we continue to support that general authority as an association. But in addition, we have policy around the fact that we believe that whatever accreditation requirements are applied to public schools should be applied equally for all schools that receive public tax dollars. So in this case, when we were talking about public virtual schools that are a part of our public school districts, that's the principle that we wanted to share with you today. Our concern with the bill and the reason that we appear as an opponent is that it would apply a different standard of evaluating success for purposes of accreditation to our virtual public high schools versus our traditional brick and mortar high schools. I just want to say thank you to Senator Adam Thomas for taking a few minutes to talk with me about the bill and share with me the concerns that are animating it around students that are transferring in and out, perhaps arriving at a virtual school as credit deficient, being counted against the school's graduation rate. But I would ask the committee to consider that those situations, particularly the kind of stories that Cassandra so kindly shared in her testimony just now, we have those same considerations at our traditional public high schools. We have students who transfer in, perhaps it's not the right fit, and their families make a choice to have them complete their education successfully, in many cases in another learning environment, and that might be a homeschool or an unaccredited private school situation. This bill would set up a double standard around those students in terms of calculating graduation rate for our public high schools. Brick and mortar would be penalized when those students exercise the choice that they have and attend a private or homeschool option. Our public virtual schools would not. So I guess I would like to leave the committee with repeating actually the the sentiment that Cassandra shared, which is that exercising school choice should not punish traditional high schools any more than it should punish our public virtual schools in terms of evaluating those schools' success in moving students across the ultimate finish line of achieving high school graduation and being counted toward that graduation rate for accreditation. So I'm happy to stand for questions, and thank you again for accommodating time for testimony today.
Thank you. We do have opponent written testimony from Kathy Hopkins and Danny Zeck from the Kansas State Board of Education. And with that, we will open it up for opponent questions. What questions do you have, committee?
Madam Chair, this is Senator.
Yes, Senator Shane.
Hi, thank you. Shannon, to help better understand your opposition to the bill, it seems like maybe you have some concerns with how attendance is determined in general, both for, our brick and mortar public schools. Is that true? Am I understanding that correctly?
I think it's really more of a concern that as the current law is applied and the regulations for the state board, graduation rate is impacted for both virtual and traditional public high schools when you have a student who is part of that cohort. They've started
Mhm.
attending school as part of that cohort, and then for whatever reason they leave and they go to an unaccredited private school, either in state or out of state, or they go to homeschool, and that's where they finish their educational journey and achieve their graduation credentials. Those students are counted as dropouts, both for virtual schools, public virtual schools in Kansas, and also for traditional public high schools in Kansas. Um, you know, if they're not unsuccessful if they, as Cassandra shared, she had a student who completed their education at homeschool and has gone on to a technical school, post-secondary. That student is successful, but because of the way that graduation rate is counted, they're counted as dropouts, and so they count
Yeah.
against the graduation rates. Our point on this bill is simply that we're not saying that you shouldn't consider making this change, but if you consider making this change, do it for all high schools, not just for the public virtual schools, because then when you have a district like I think I've shared in with committee members, I serve on a board of education in a district. My district has a statewide virtual K through 12 school. The graduation rates for our virtual school versus our two traditional high schools would not be comparable because you're counting different sets of students. And so if you're trying to evaluate the work that is being done and the successes that are being had in those buildings, I think it's just as a matter of being able to have equal accountability across different modes of delivery. It would make sense if you're going to make this change, make it for all, not just for the virtual schools.
Okay, so make it for all, not just the virtual. Okay. All right, thank you.
Correct. Thank you for your question.
Committee, do we have any other questions?
This is Senator Sykes, and just a question for the revisers. Can we get the statute of what the requirement currently is for the public schools?
I will track that down for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, this is Senator Gossage. I had my hand raised. Not sure if you
Okay.
saw it.
No, I'm trying to keep track, but Senator
I
Gossage,
know.
and then
I had the same issue at 8:30 this morning with my committee. And
then
so I
do
know it's
see
difficult.
Then I do see Senator Petty, so we'll go Senator Gossage, then Senator Petty.
Very good. So my question also is on the lines of Senator Shane, and that is, so it sounds almost like not necessarily an opponent, just saying, fine if you do that, but do the same for all. So given that, would you be in favor of the bill if it were to not just be virtual schools, but would change this graduation criteria for brick and mortar as well?
Chair Erickson, Senator Gossage, thank you for the question. I would Our legislative policy, because we do support the state board's accrediting authority over those rules, we would likely be neutral on the bill if it was equally applied to all schools, but because it applies unequally to the different kinds of public high schools that we have, we felt that we needed to raise that as a concern with the bill as written.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do think that Shannon has shared with us the concern, and I too would appreciate seeing the statute that pertains to currently what the State Board of Education has to do or does to determine the percentage of of graduation rates, because this does raise a concern. I would agree of having a different standard and not looking at it in the same way. So I think that's a very important, because we do look at that measurement, and it say well, it provides another piece of information for us, and um, I can understand what virtual schools are concerned about, but that's the same thing for all of our public high schools as well. So I would not want to see us establish a double standard either. So Shannon, thanks for bringing that up, and I look forward to seeing that statute.
Committee.
Madam Chair.
I'm so sorry. Seeing no other questions, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 45 and turn our attention to Senate Bill 114 and open that hearing with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In 2023, the legislature enacted KSA 727121, which allows students who are enrolled in either a virtual school or non-public elementary or secondary school to participate in any activity regulated by the Kansas State High School Activities Association if that activity is offered by the school district where the student resides. Senate Bill 114 would authorize those same students to participate in ancillary activities, events, and programs associated with the CASA regulated activities that the student participates in. This would include activities such as pep rallies, award ceremonies, yearbook, or other events honoring activity participants. Additionally, the bill would explicitly state that students who participate in activities under this law would be entitled to all rights and subject to all responsibilities of any other participating students, regardless of the student's enrollment status. The bill would make it unlawful for any school district or the Kansas State High School Activities Association to discriminate against a student based on the student's enrollment status. This bill would take effect on July 1, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tamara. Committee, what questions do we have for the reviser? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tamara, I'm noticing that in the bill from line 16 to 22, the addition that refers to ancillary activities. So it wouldn't matter what time of day these were. And is this referring just to things that the student would have not been a part of through any activity, or is it referring to if they had been part of these through an activity?
Thank you for the question. So participation in these activities, there's no reference to what time of day or what date these activities would be on. This new provision of law would apply regardless of when the activity occurs. And these are activities that the student would participate in based on the existing law. So those activities that are regulated by ks and offered by the school district where the student lives. So any ancillary activity that's related to the activity the student already participates in would be the activities that it's talking about there on page 1, starting in line 16.
Thank you.
Committee, additional questions for the reviser? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to proponent testimony, and we will start with Josh Nye from Kriegshauser Nye Law Group. Josh?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairwoman Erickson. Would you be willing to hear the story from my clients first, and then I could wrap up with kind of the legal thoughts? And
That would be
Kira
fine.
Richardson and Aubrey Richardson.
Yes, that would be fine. So we will have Aubrey Richardson and Kira Richardson.
Okay, this is Aubrey Richardson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to present my testimony. My name is Aubrey Richardson, and I'm from Sharon Springs, Kansas. I have been homeschooled in Wallace County my entire life. Last school year, my senior year, I got the privilege to play sports in my own hometown for Wallace County High School USD 241, thanks to Senate Bill 113. I was so excited because for the first time, I would finally get to play sports with friends I have known my entire life. My team had a lot of success. We placed third in both volleyball and basketball at the Class 1A Division II state tournaments. I also had the opportunity to compete along with many of my other teammates at the state track and field meet in Wichita, Kansas, making the podium in high jump. I was honored to be chosen for various awards from our league and also from the Kansas State High School Activities Association, receiving all-state awards in 2 sports. I was honored to share the title of Most Inspirational Player in Volleyball with another teammate, an honor given to me by my teammates. However, when our annual senior night came, the school refused to let me participate. I was not allowed to walk across the very floor I had just finished playing on with the other seniors, many of whom were my teammates. Though many of my teammates went to bat for me, asking the school to allow me to participate, the school had no interest in recognizing me in front of the community I was representing in uniform. When the activities banquet came in the spring, my coaches notified the school administration that we, myself and the other homeschooled athletes, had lettered in our appropriate sports. However, the administration made the decision not to allow homeschoolers the opportunity to letter in any sport, though they did not communicate that decision to us at the time. We learned of this at the banquet when we were not mentioned and not allowed to be in the pictures for these awards. This bill will protect non-public school students who have a legal right to participate in these activities from discrimination. I kindly ask for your support of this bill to ensure that all students in the district can safely participate without fear of unnecessary exclusion and discrimination. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Aubrey. And Kira Richardson, did you want to address the committee?
Yes, I would love to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for hearing my testimony. My name is Kira Richardson. My husband and I have homeschooled our many children in Wallace County for 14 years, and I have called Wallace County, Kansas home my entire life, minus my 4 years of college. I myself am a graduate of Wallace County High School and had the pleasure of competing as a student athlete in 3 sports for all 4 years of high school. In 2023, with the passage of SB 113, our homeschool children were able to play sports for our local public school, USD 241. If you're unfamiliar with rural Kansas communities, sporting events are often a main source of entertainment and quite often the only source of entertainment. So this opportunity was very much welcomed in our home. Our 4 children, 3 high schoolers and 1 middle schooler at the time, began to wear Wildcat uniforms and represent Wallace County schools. Although we were excited, we were also aware that the new law wasn't welcomed by everyone at the school, but we knew that our children would be playing with friends they had known their entire lives, so we felt confident that it would be a good experience. Our children had the same responsibilities as the enrolled students. They had to follow the district's rules and policies, communicating absences with staff properly, following cell phone usage rules, dress codes, codes of conduct, among other things. After hearing through other students at the school that our senior daughter was not going to be allowed to participate in the district's annual senior night, we inquired of the administration what their policy was. They didn't have a policy at the time, but after that meeting, an emergency board meeting was called that created policy preventing homeschool students from participating in senior night, citing the very language of SB 113 as justification for that exclusion. At the annual activities banquet, none of the homeschooled children were allowed to receive letters or be recognized in any of the award winners' pictures. Even though their coaches all confirmed that the requirements of letter winning set forth in the school handbook had been met, the administration made the decision not to award letters to homeschool students. That was never communicated directly to us, but a school board member asked and on our behalf, and that is what the administration communicated to her. Our school district used the language of SB 113, a law which was meant to include non-public school students, to exclude and discriminate against them. This bill would protect non-public school students from this kind of discrimination and ensure that school districts use the law lawfully. Every non-public school student that has a legal right to these activities shouldn't have to be burdened by the discriminatory behaviors that a district may hold. I would ask you to support this bill and put an end to any future discrimination of this kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, and we'll now return to you, Josh, if you would like to testify at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted you to hear the story of my client, Kara Richardson, and her daughter, Aubrey Richardson, just to give you some context for why this bill has been introduced. There's a very specific fact pattern that I find extremely troubling as far as at least a governmental entity being able to read a law that was intended, as Kira said, to include more students in local sporting events and forensic events and other CASA events, but to somehow read into that required this public humiliation of, even though they put in the same effort, the same practice schedule, the same game schedule, wore the same uniform, rode the same bus, that there were somehow two classes of student athletes, one of whom is able to put lettering and other awards on their college scholarship applications, and the other not. And so I think this is really just legislating common sense. I didn't think that was necessary in situations like this, but it has become necessary, especially because the issue has not been resolved locally. I got involved in the last several months just hearing about what happened last school year, but it's my understanding that after the kind of public display of, and this is not in the demand letter that I attached to my testimony because I wanted to keep any minor names and minor pictures, minor children pictures out of public testimony. But the exhibits in there show the asterisks of who lettered and who didn't in this public awards banquet at the end. So it's not just a mistake; it was very intentional exclusion. And so it was taken up several times by the board, and the board voted formally on a split vote to exclude these students from these types of events. The administration obviously was directly involved in those decisions as well. And it wasn't just a one-off, it was several different things. And that's why this type of catch-all, pep rallies, et cetera, that is in the bill. To Senator Petty's question of the revisor earlier, we're just looking for any connected activity that is promoting or honoring the student athletes for these types of CASA activities, that all student athletes, regardless of how they became qualified to become student athletes, get to participate in that. So if they're going to have a activities banquet at the end of the year, recognizing the teams and the teammates, that the objective criteria for any honors or participation or lettering would be applied across the board and not not enrollment status wouldn't be used as a basis to distinguish. And similar with pep rallies or anything, when there is an event that is offered to the community or to the school to celebrate this particular team or celebrate student athletes because they are student athletes, then that each activity and student athletes' ability to participate in that would be uniform. And that goes for the rights, the responsibilities of each student athlete as well. Aubrey had to show up to practice at the same time. She had to work hard. She had to earn her spot on the teams. She had to abide by all the policies that would allow her to continue to be qualified as a student athlete. But that wasn't returned to her in terms of equal treatment. And so that's what I think this would do. The last thing I want to mention is that after this bill was introduced, I heard about another instance from another senator regarding students at the Fort Hays CAMS. It's the Kansas Academy of Mathematics and Science, I believe, in Fort Hays State University, that it's my understanding, and again, I'm just getting this secondhand, that those students were, even though the local districts wanted them to be able to participate in local schools, these are students residing in Hays at this at CAMS while they're in high school. This particular student, I think, was near Great Bend or Ellenwood, but that they were not allowed to participate in the local Hays KSHA activities because that wasn't by KSHA, because that wasn't allowed under the law. So I'd ask you to consider that suggested amendment as well. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony, committee. I do want to draw your attention to written only proponent testimony from Brittany Jones with Kansas Family Voice. And with that, we will open it up for questions. Senator Petty.
This is really a question for Tamara, because it was mentioned in the testimony from Aubrey and her mother that there hadn't been an opportunity to participate prior to the passage of SB 113. However, there has been within KSHA guidelines a policy for how a homeschooled student can participate in school activities. Would that be correct?
Senator, this section of law, Senate Bill 113, was enacted in 2023. So this is now a possibility, but it has not been a possibility for very long.
KSHA had guidelines for and participation. It just was not in state law. Is that correct?
I would defer to KSHA to talk about their own policies, but this entered state law in 2023.
Okay. Well, I'm aware that it's in KSHA guidelines because I have direct action with people that have participated. I'll look forward to seeing whatever this amendment is that has been put forward. But thanks for the information, Tamara.
Committee, any other questions for the proponents? Okay, seeing none, committee, we will turn our attention to neutral testimony from Bill Faflick, the Executive Director of Kansas State High School Athletic and Activity Association. Mr. Faflick, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair Erickson and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to provide neutral testimony regarding Senate Bill 114 on behalf of the Kansas State High School Activities Association. KSHSAA has provided written testimony congruent to the talking points that I will share today. I will not go into the detail that is included in that, but know that you'll have an opportunity to read that if you've not already. As an association of member schools, the High School Activities Association serves to ensure those member schools follow the rules that are put in place by our elected leaders, as well as by our governing boards, who are also elected by our membership to represent the 349 member high schools and the 389 member middle schools, which comprise the KSHSAA. Just like you, those governing boards I referenced write rules for membership to follow, and that staff then have the opportunity to enforce. We are certainly that, an association that follows rules. We're a staff that expects our member schools to follow rules. In regards to Senate Bill 114, we certainly agree with the philosophical intent of that rule, though we don't believe it needs to be necessarily put into law. Until this WebEx call, I was unaware of a concern relative to students not being honored, and I'm quite disappointed to have heard that. Certainly, we support the expectation that any student who has put in the work, that has been selected for a team, and who meets requirements of the team be honored accordingly. In trainings for our member schools, when this law became effective on July 1st of 2023, there was a common refrain that was heard, and that was, once students are approved, we treat them just the same. We treat the non-public school students, whether they be coming from a homeschool setting, from a private school setting, a virtual school setting, whatever that happens to be, just like any other student that is in one of the performing groups or that is on one of the athletic teams that is representing the school. So not knowing of the activities or the honors being denied until just now, we certainly do support those ancillary activities, whether it be a PEP assembly, whether it be a letter certificate, whether it be an awards banquet for those students who have earned that opportunity by enduring through the season and celebrating through participation in the activities that those schools sponsor. It certainly would be contrary to what we have taught, what we would expect. And just like any other concern, we get calls every day, just like any state agency would or quasi-state agency would, where people call and ask questions. They often call to complain, and we hear those complaints, and we certainly follow up with member schools and share what those expectations would be. In those expectations, we often do try to take the role of a teacher and share the philosophical perspective of why we do what we do. To make that difference for kids, to connect them to school, to provide teaching and learning opportunities, and to provide opportunities to build that school culture, that school climate, both at home as well as at school, as kids earn those recognitions. Again, the association believes that this is already common practice. We did have 437 students last year participate, 589 students so far this year. Some of that data is included in the written testimony that I've provided for you, but certainly know that we would like to see all students recognized for honors that they achieve. We don't discern, once the uniform goes on the award stand at the state track meet, for a high jumper or a long jumper, whether they were a student that was in the virtual school, the home school, or in the brick and mortar setting. They earn those awards just as competition dictates, or performance in competition dictates. So again, I would stand for questions that the committee may have, but thank you for the opportunity to represent the Kansas State High School Activities Association in the work that we do.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Committee, what questions do we have for Mr. Pavlik?
Madam Chair, this is Senator Beverly Gossage. If you see my hand up.
Yes, Senator Gossage.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. I'll just say Bill. I'm not sure I can pronounce. I think it's Pavlik. Thank you so much for your testimony. After reading your testimony and hearing your testimony, it sounds like what you're saying is that this bill is completely unnecessary, and that had you been aware of this situation, they could have appealed to KSHSAA. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, Mr. Pavlik. Did we lose Mr. Faflick?
Madam Chair, this is Lance
Yes.
from Broadcasting in the Room. I can see he's still present and unmuted, but it doesn't seem he's speaking, so it's not sure if it's on his end or what's happening.
Okay. We will try to get him back. I do see Senator Petty's hand is raised, so I hope he can hear us, and maybe we'll just accumulate some questions for when we get him back. Senator Petty.
Oh, well, thank you, Madam Chair. Mine actually follows along with Senator Gossage. So if we do get him back, I'll ask at that time.
Okay.
I know this is out of order, but I'd be happy to address the question. This is Josh Nye.
In light of not seeing Mr. Faflick, and he is a neutral, I will allow your response.
So the issue has to do with KSHA awards and league honors versus district awards. These particular students at the activities banquet received KSHA awards in their packets, but they didn't receive district awards. I think this more specific question would be whether KSHA has jurisdiction over local districts to give awards of their own, because I don't think that KSHA regulates district lettering.
If I may
So
have a
this-
follow-up then. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Yes, Senator Gossage.
Thank you. So then that is a differentiation. And I appreciate that. I think most of us believe in local control. And we always are concerned about, stepping on the toes. What bothers me most here, though, is it sounds like the students did all the work. They were allowed to participate. As a mother that homeschooled one of her 4 children, I went to the school board and said, I think it's important that my son be allowed to also participate in other of the activities. They fully agreed. He was severely dyslexic, and homeschooling was basically the only option for him. This was many, many years ago. I'm very pleased to hear that we are saying that these kids that can participate in sport, etc., very sad you can't go back and say now you have to allow them to attend their banquet. The banquet was over. So I really am pleased to hear that we're trying to look forward and see what we can do with passing a law that says you have to allow them to participate, but then they are not allowed to get an award. Doesn't seem to make sense, but I would like to hear what Mr. Flathil has to say.
Okay, do we have Mr. Faflick back yet?
I am here. I've not gone anywhere. I'm not sure you can hear me.
We can hear you now. Apologize
All right,
for
yeah.
that.
It's kind of
Okay.
amazing. I've not moved and not touched anything technology wise, so I'm glad that audio is working now. It must be the snow in Topeka. Certainly, we to answer the original question from Senator Gossage, we take many calls and always follow up directly with administration. Most of those concerns are resolved when we share the unity and uniqueness expectation. Well, yes, I agree with legal counsel for the student and family that there are certain things that are local control. There are also expectations that the Activities Association would have, and most of the time simply sharing those expectations satisfies the request or the concern. In this case, I don't know whether it would or not. I'm not aware that the board had taken action, but certainly we've joined many board meetings over the course of the years that I've been here at the association, and always have been able to share a perspective that brings some credibility to what others are doing and what that expectation would be on a statewide basis.
Any other questions?
This is Senator Petty.
Yes, Senator Petty.
So, Mr. Pavlik, you referred to that you often get, well, you daily get questions about KSHA activities and occurrences that have occurred. And do you feel that it's necessary to bring legislation forward to change state statute for each one of those?
Well, we would prefer not to have a state statute for every question or concern that comes, but we defer to you for that. Again, philosophically, we believe we're in line with that. We'll continue to teach that. Again, I'm disappointed that this particular student did not have the opportunity that she had earned.
And then just as a follow-up, and there is somewhat of a difference between, as legal counsel had mentioned, between state and within the district itself, what they might choose to do.
There's always that opportunity for schools to make some decisions that are within their control. Sometimes, on the very egregious items, you compromise your status with the Kansas State High School Activities Association. But there's a lot of steps to go through before we would get to that level.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, I do have a question, Mr. Faflick. Were you made aware of this situation prior to the filing of this bill?
I was not. This was the first I'd heard of it.
Okay. And in light of knowing that the district could make decisions that KSHA would not necessarily have authority over, wouldn't this bill be necessary so that districts do have to allow equal opportunity for those students who abide by all of the rules as any other member?
Well, I suppose that it might be necessary to legislate some common sense, but certainly in this particular case, I'd like at least to have the shot to address it first.
Well, and I think at this point, knowing that this has occurred, it certainly would be beneficial to reiterate to your member districts that they should have the same opportunity. It's a shame that we do have to have legislation like this, that adults would do such a thing to a student in such a way that would single them out unfairly and unjustly. And I'm disappointed that the school district isn't here to explain their reasoning for that. And it is a shame we have to have legislation, but I do feel like this is necessary, and I'm sorry that this happened to the student, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure it does not happen, or that if it does happen, there will be consequences going forward. So, committee, are there any other questions? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 114. And committee, we will meet tomorrow and be prepared to work some bills. I appreciate everyone joining via WebEx, and seeing no other business, we are